On this episode of Money and Power, we talk about America, leadership, America, Walmart, and America. But first, kidding.
I got the money and the power. Yeah. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz we've been going hard for too long. Can't get enough, what is you on? Yeah. Really ain't nothing I could drop that. Wake up in the morning, make it all okay.
Welcome to episode 12 of Money and Power, our weekly look at the questions related to finance, politics, and culture. I am your host, Nathan Martin, and joining me from Michigan, a financial consultant and host of the Rob Talks Money podcast, Rob Johnson.
Howdy.
And joining me in studio here in the crown jewel of rural Ohio, a purveyor of justice, a baller, a shot caller, and a golden ruler, Jeremiah Martin.
Hello.
Together we form the trio of talk, the triad of the tittle-tattle, and the triumvirate of the tate-a-tate. And we are here to bring you the latest happenings and to talk about various and sundry topics that tickle our fancy and hopefully tickle yours.
Gross.
We're all about the tickling.
So guys, how obviously this is going to hit right after Independence Day. So are you guys feeling kind of patriotic? Are you guys ready for the big holiday?
Absolutely. It's we are recording here on July 3rd, and on my way over here to the studio, there were fireworks going off in the distance, and I can only assume that they were celebrating the recording of this very podcast. I can only assume.
Because it's not for the founding of our country, because that's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, yeah.
So there's no other reason for them to celebrate with illegal fireworks.
Absolutely. Yep, here in Ohio, the only reason we celebrate with illegal fireworks is the recording of a podcast
100%.
that no one has heard of yet.
So, Rob?
Yeah, I'm not a big fireworks person, so I appreciate the holiday and I like it. So it's good stuff.
Is that because MASH doesn't have a bottle episode dealing with fireworks?
No, they do. So shows how much you know.
Actually, in season 6, episode 3,
I can straight up tell you
this
this
rousing exhibition.
Okay, first of all, I don't ever use the phrases rousing and exhibition together. They're always separate. So you guys both are way off base this week already, and I'm tired of the character attacks. Just because I've seen better TV than you guys doesn't mean you need to assault me weekly.
That's fair.
I know.
That's fair.
I'm a fair man.
Firm, but fair. We appreciate your leadership here.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's great leadership. Speaking of which, we do have some great topics that we're going to be speaking about. One is that we are starting and kicking off kind of our leadership month here at the Money and Power podcast. And so we certainly hope that you guys will get a lot out of that, and that'll be a little bit later. But before we get into all that, now is our time to look back at the weird, the inane, and the general happenings going on in the world by the crazy people who just happen to live here. News Bits.
News bits. Show me your bits of news.
All right, so Jeremiah, what do you got?
So a little bit of news. This actually happened last week, but shortly after we recorded last week's episode. So definitely wanted to make sure we didn't go without mentioning it. But as of last week, Justice Anthony Kennedy has announced his retirement from the Supreme Court, and that will be official as of July 31st. And so, of course, the internet, the news media, Facebook, social media is going crazy over this on both sides, determining whether this is the greatest news that could ever have possibly ever happened, or if this will launch us straight into the likes of Nazi Germany, or somewhere in between. And so there's a lot of rhetoric going around related to this. What if President Trump nominates a conservative judge, or more specifically, a constitutional originalist judge, what that means for maybe Supreme Court rulings that maybe have been less than favorable to the originalist interpretation of the Constitution, such as Roe v. Wade or other poorly ruled cases. But yeah, there's a lot going on in that. Will the justice that is nominated, will he fit that bill? He or she fit that bill? Will that justice be confirmed by the Senate? What that looks like? Should it be done before the election this year? There's just a lot of questions going around on that, and the internet is up in arms on both sides. So yeah, very, very interesting news there.
And more to come, I'm sure. So I'm kind of in the giddy at the news camp. Kennedy was not what we call a conservative justice, although he did join on certain major issues. I actually think that the reason he decided to leave at this time was because of some of the free speech things that were coming before the Supreme Court.
Right.
One of the really not talked about things with some of these Supreme Court rulings, especially on speech issues, is that the four liberal justices that blocked together on some of these free speech issues, some of their dissents were downright troubling. They don't believe they're moving away from a individual right of freedom of speech to a communal right, a community right of freedom of speech, similar to what has been argued before when it comes to gun rights in the Second Amendment.
Right.
That's not an individual right, it's a community right. And I think that, honestly, he looked at some of those issues and realized that is extremely troubling. Look at the case of one of the pro-life clinics in California.
Right, yeah.
And they were basically being forced by the state of California to promote abortions at their crisis pregnancy center and clinic. And they ruled 5-4 that was unconstitutional because of free speech limitations. But think about that. It was a 5-4 ruling. That is insane that it was that close, just by anyone's definition of free speech, and what even liberals have consistently thought in the past. To see the liberal justices kind of come this way on free speech is really, it's almost mind-blowing to see that. So I think that's one of the main reasons that he decided to finally step down. So, there's going to be a lot of vitriol on this, but it is a Republican appointee for a Republican appointee. The big fight, though, is going to be if something happens with Ruth Bader Ginsburg before Trump's term's up. But this pretty much solidifies that the Republicans are going to keep the Senate, in my mind. I do not feel that, one, the Democrats were playing a lot of defense and not offense in this election cycle anyways. And having Supreme Court justices hanging across a thread is really going to cause a lot of turnout where maybe there would have been more depressed turnout. So I think that is pretty much a given because of this. I think that because of that, you're going to see that Republicans are not going to be in that much of a hurry to get this through. If for some reason something does go awry in November, they can just push it through with the nuclear option before the new Senate takes effect in January anyways. So I think they're going to kind of slow play this to make sure that people have it in their minds of what is really at stake. And it's going to be some political theater, but it's not going to be nearly as vitriolic or political theater as it is with Ruth Bader Ginsburg or a liberal justice. And the reason being is because if you get to away from a 5-4 to a 6-3, that's where Roe v. Wade really becomes endangered to the left. About time, and I'll be jumping up and down hysterically, but that really does come into the foresight there.
Yeah, and even with Roe v. Wade, one of the kind of ongoing discussions, specifically on the right, is let's say that Roe v. Wade is in play and it can be overturned. What does that actually accomplish? If you listen to the left, they would say, well, that means that women's rights are infringed upon across the country, and that abortion will suddenly be outlawed in Nazi Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, it actually would not outlaw abortion across the country. What it would do, unlike Roe v. Wade, which overturned all of the existing laws on the books related to abortion, what it would do is it would simply go back to the states. And so, just another interesting thing that will play out. What that looks like, we don't know, but certainly an important piece of news.
Yeah. So, Rob, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'm not a giant fan of the level of importance that people put on the Supreme Court. I almost think that people treat it as a political arm to get more policy through rather than what the Constitution frames it as. But I'm excited that Kennedy is stepping down. I really hope that Amy Barrett gets the nod from Trump. That's my leading pick. So I think she'll be a fairly easy confirmation, as she went through a pretty grueling process before. So
absolutely. Sorry to cut you off there, Rob.
Oh, it's all good. Go ahead.
No, it's absolutely. I think sometime soon, maybe after our leadership series, hopefully we can do a little bit more of a deep dive into the Supreme Court, what it was originally framed as, what it's turned into, and kind of the ups and downs there. But yeah, definitely a conversation that we'll be having as time moves on.
Yeah, and I'll be able to get into my hot take about how John Roberts and his Obamacare ruling was actually very smart tactically from a judicial standpoint.
Ooh.
Which is very, very unpopular. So it's going to be a hot take. That
I can actually hear people unsubscribing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a tease for that. People are like, "Oh, I can't wait for that." So, anyways, Rob, what is your news bit?
So, not nearly as interesting as the political ongoings of Supreme Court justices, but in the NBA, two major deals took place over the last week. The first one is LeBron James turned down his player option and signed with the Los Angeles Lakers for a 4-year, $154 million deal. So the big headline is he moves from the East to the West, which a lot of people thought that he wouldn't do because the competition is much more difficult. And in the East, he had seemingly a pretty easy-ish ride to the conference finals or to the NBA finals every year. The second one is Boogie Cousins turned down a 2-year, $40 million deal from the Pelicans, which is the team he was on, to take a 1-year, $5.3 million contract from the Golden State Warriors. So now the Golden State Warriors have a starting five that all appeared in the All-Star game, which is something.
Yes.
So
it's amazing.
I'm a big NBA fan, and I think that I've always sided with the players. If the players want to do what they think is right, great. I don't really care about what people think about the sport or super teams or the way it's headed. I think that there's going to be enough talent in Philadelphia and Boston and Detroit and to make it a good season from the East and from the West. So plus you get to see Houston, Golden State, LA, all duke it out in the West. So I think it's going to be fine. I'm not a big fan of loyalty to a team, because if I was at a company and let's say another company offered me $20 million more to move over than where I was before, I would absolutely do it. All things considered. So I think everyone should really be players first, not loyalty to a city or anything like that, because it really is, they only have 10 to 15 years to make cash before they're out. So I'm all for the players in this.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about that whole thing is the fact that he took a major pay cut.
Yeah.
But also, so in the kind of bearing the lead on the LeBron James thing, it really looks like they are setting up for 18-19 to be a crap year for the Lakers.
Yep.
They're not. It doesn't look by all appearances that they're trying to compete for a championship this year. They're doing a bunch of one-year deals to set up for the following year. And I just begin to question, like, LeBron James, how many years does he have left in the league? And to essentially take a mulligan and waste, like, why didn't he just sign for 1 year in Cleveland and say, nod, nod, wink, wink, I'm coming your way next year? Like, I don't understand. I guess I just don't understand it. Like, I'm all for him going to LA. I think that makes sense from a business stance, just from his business side, but to basically take a mulligan on a year this late in his career, I don't know. He's not making the finals.
I don't think
with
it's
that
I don't think
team.
it's a mulligan. I think that Los Angeles was about a 500 team last year, and I think they'll definitely compete. I think they'll be 4 or 5 seed in the West, and I think all they have to do is get past either Houston or Oklahoma City, and they're in the finals. So it's not really a strong task. Plus, Houston just lost a good part of their defense with Ariza leaving. So I think it's possible.
I mean, it's possible, but I think they're going to be a 7 or an 8 seed.
Okay.
Because I think they're going to be at like 45, maybe 50 wins, and that's it.
Yeah, I just can't
Mainly
think of 6
because
good teams in the West.
See, going through in my mind,
Because the Spurs are gutted. Kawhi's probably leaving.
yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna bet against Popovich.
Dallas blows.
Yeah,
The Suns suck. The Clippers are the
depends on
Clippers.
Josh Jackson there,
but it's just.
I mean, I think you have the Trailblazers. I think you have the Kings. I think you have obviously the Warriors. You got the Rockets and Oklahoma State, and then maybe Denver as kind of a flashy team there.
Yeah, I like Denver a lot. I like Jokic.
So, yeah, I'm thinking they're going to be at a 7 or 8, mainly because I don't see how that cast of characters they have there is going to be able to actually work together.
Yeah,
Essentially, since they all hate each other.
well, I think Lonzo Ball is a pretty
It's
good
like
point guard for
it's like
James.
they took of all LeBron James's nemesises from previous series and decided to put them on a team together. I mean, it's the only thing that would cap it for me is if they took like Delonte West and decided to sign him as well.
Yeah.
Hey, we know he had relations with your mother, LeBron, but we're going to throw him on the team. I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, what's been interesting for me is I kind of expected when some of the rumors came out, I kind of expected when this came about that Cleveland would be up in arms again, that they would be burning jerseys, that they would, kind of a repeat of history. And I haven't really seen that. I mean, there's always going to be your poor sports, your people that are bitter. But I mean, I think for the most part, people are like, hey, we appreciate what LeBron did. He came, gave us a title, did a lot of good things in the community, and and it's a positive send off. So it's been really interesting to see.
There was a lot of
it
gratefulness.
was all quiet. They didn't have to. They weren't strung along to watch it on ESPN.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
There was a lot of things with the past one.
I will say I was wrong because I said, I think it was on the opening couple of episodes, I said he was going to Philadelphia, and I guaranteed it, and I was absolutely wrong.
And I pretty much told you that you were crazy. I'm pretty sure. So
No, you said he was going to go to the
to
Canadian team, so you were even more wrong.
I did not say he was going to Toronto. Would you shut it? All right.
No, not that.
So yeah,
team.
I think
Canadian
Rob
basketball league.
Canadian basketball league.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
CBL.
I'm pretty sure Rob cut this out in the final edit. But yeah, I think I'm pretty sure my prediction was that he was going to LA. But yeah, that was. I think he cut that out in the final edit.
It's true.
Yes,
I did.
because you are an aficionado. listen, I'm not going to deny that you might have thought that, but it would definitely be on the broken clocks being right twice a day scenario. What do we call that? A statistical anomaly. All right, so Walmart has pulled some controversial apparel from its website. They have pulled the controversial anti-Trump Impeach 45 apparel from its website after receiving harsh feedback online. Outcry sparked a hashtag boycott Walmart trend on Twitter as users expressed their distaste for the chain promoting the impeachment of President Trump, echoing congressional Democrats. So this has been obviously pulled. It was like some baby onesies with Impeach 45 and some kids' clothing on there as well. So a little bit about this. People need to understand like what Walmart.com actually is. A lot of it is third-party sellers, just like Amazon is. And this is basically a pet peeve of mine, mainly because I got this at working at Walmart. Like, be like, it's on your website, and I'll be like, that doesn't mean we sell it as a work when I was working at Walmart, because they have a lot of third-party stuff, just like Amazon. Amazon facilitates a lot of third-party sales. They don't necessarily facilitate. They're not actually selling the product nor warehousing the product itself. So it is different. And so anyways, obviously it wasn't Walmart that was doing this. You're not going to be able to walk through Walmart and see a dumpster bin of Impeach 45 apparel that they're throwing out. So it just a couple things. I think, it's the outrage culture strikes again. But it is kind of funny to have, because they look like sports jerseys with the 45 as like a sports logo type thing and the impeach above it. So, kudos to whoever thought about that. Yeah, it's interesting. What are you guys' takes on that?
Yeah, I think that it's fine. If people want to sell Impeach 45 on Walmart, whatever, doesn't matter to me. What I find ironic is that I guarantee some Trump supporter was in the middle of Walmart when he went on Twitter and said boycott Walmart, and then went to go finish checking out. So it's hypocrisy at its finest. So I'm fine, whatever. It doesn't matter to me.
Where are they going to go? They're going to go to Target?
Yeah, right. No, because they already boycotted them over them having unified bathrooms or whatever that people said they were going to do, but turned out they didn't. So I don't know. It's hard to keep up with all the boycotts and the corporate finger pointing and all that stuff. It's hard to keep up.
You know what this reminds me of a little bit? So I'm a child of the 90s, and trying to keep up with the evangelical boycotts that were going on. I was confused on what I was actually supposed to be against or not. Like, do we like Disney? Do we not like Disney? What was actually going on? Then I went to this weird private school that they pretty much boycotted life because they were from like the Bob Jones vein, and it was just like a beat of music. It was actually the devil was in the beat. Yeah,
it's true.
So I had to. I got suspended for wearing a Carmen t-shirt. So that kind of tells you.
Like the play?
The level.
Like Carmen the play?
No, like Carmen, like the singer. The Christian singer.
Oh. At first I thought you said Cartman, like from South Park.
No. Carmen. Carmen. I think I was wearing an Addicted to Jesus t-shirt.
If he was wearing a Cartman shirt, he would have been burned at the stake. That's a whole nother level.
Yeah, I've been flogged, literally.
Wow. That's something.
Yeah. No. But yeah, so that's just whatever. It just some of these boycotts I don't think are necessarily effective. I mean, I guess we killed Kmart or something because we never shopped at Kmart.
But here's the thing. This is a perfect example of the types of things that we talk about on this show, that this is a blind spot when it comes to both the right and the left. That boycotts ultimately only work if you can actually rally enough people to actually boycott. And that only works if you're not, to your examples, Nathan, you're not asking people to boycott the next new thing every single week.
Yeah.
And frankly, like, that has been the left's MO since Trump has been elected. Like, boycott this, boycott that, do this, like, we're going to leave the country, and then they don't leave the country, and it's all a bunch of empty words. And so we see these empty words both on the right and the left. In the case of, in this example, like, well, they pushed back enough to get it removed from the website. What that actually accomplishes, I don't know, but, at least in their mind, they did something.
Yeah, I mean, they did accomplish something, but you gotta be able to pick your battles. In general and in life, you have to be able to pick your battles. You can't just fight everything, because if you're fighting everything, then nothing's truly worth fighting for. Okay, and that's kind of what's happened with the left in their response to Trump. Like, there have been some things, and we have talked about them on this podcast, that Trump has done that we have not agreed with. However, there have been some things that we can say, you know what, I may not agree with character or the way he tweets or whatever, but this particular thing he's done well, right? It's called calling balls and strikes. But if everything you're calling is is outside of the strike zone of civility in your mind, then people just don't take you seriously. So if everything is an impeachable offense when it comes to Trump, then guess what? Nothing is really an impeachable offense, because people just roll their eyes and they avoid you at the dinner party that you're at. That's what you accomplish. So good job, liberals. Like, you're just helping get the man reelected is what's happening.
I did see an interesting tweet. This guy named Ryan Fournier, he said, Walmart, why are you selling Impeach 45 baby clothes on your website? What kind of message are you trying to send? Is that a real question? What do you... It can't be any more clear. It's not a riddle. Ryan, idiot. Read a book.
Well, but once again, to the point of the idea that this was on the website, it's the equivalent of contacting Amazon and saying, basically, you obviously endorse everything that is on your website. How dare you sell insert whatever? So it doesn't make a lot of sense when I'm sure, I haven't double checked this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you can Google on, I'm sure that you can search on Walmart.com and find pro-Trump stuff, neutral stuff, anti-Trump stuff, like, just like you could if you searched on Amazon.
Exactly.
So it's not like they are endorsing only a singular view. And if that were the case, maybe there's a point there. But
also it's the Streisand effect, right? So you're just drawing attention to the idea that this product exists, and if a certain demographic supports it, they're just going to start purchasing it en masse. Like this person or this company who's behind this, they're not going to get hurt by this because they're now selling out of all their Impeach 45 materials.
Yeah, I just bought 3. My son's going to be walking around with one next week. So it was that.
So for the record, if you are buying a Impeach 45 onesie, like, or an Impeach 44 onesie or anything of the like, it's like, your baby does not have politics. This is a bit much. But I just went to Walmart.com and I searched for Trump, and there are Make America Great Again hats, several varieties. There is his book, The Art of the Deal. There are several dozen books about him. There's quite a list of pro-Trump merchandise, and so for this to be picked out as if it is, Walmart as a whole is making a political statement, then it's a little ridiculous. Now, granted, other companies have done this. Amazon did this when they removed Confederate flags from their website. Yet allowed the sale of Nazi flags. That is an obvious political statement that isn't backed by, it's not a general principle. You are making an obvious political statement, and I don't see that here with Walmart.
Yeah. All right. What interesting times we find ourselves in. Happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day.
I wonder where my cousin got his flags after Amazon did that.
Freaking Wayne.
Walmart.com.
Yes.
Obviously. Is that even a
Skew.
option?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. So, guys, we have for our main segment, we're going to be talking, kind of delving into a leadership series. I obviously am super excited about this. This all started, this kind of journey all started a few years ago when I was doing a lot of leadership development and relationship training, really grassroots training for political organizations. And what I realized was that essentially the foundation of reaching out to people and trying to get them to change their viewpoint on something is building that relationship, building up that trust. And so are there different rules or laws that we can use to govern this? So I kind of developed a series called the 5 Laws of Relationship. So what you are going to hear is an introduction and a sample of part 1 of my talk on leadership, specifically dealing with the 5 laws of a relationship. And we will be listening to these and expounding to them and how they relate to our various fields throughout the course of this leadership series that we're doing over the next 5 weeks. And so without further ado, here I am talking about the golden rule. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you about something that is very important to me and something that I think that I have unlocked to better help you guys achieve success in what you're trying to achieve success in. Some of you are here because you're wanting to be a better leader for your team, or you're trying to lead your business better. Some of you are here because you want to improve the relationships with your spouse or maybe with your children. And others just figured that this was an interesting talk and discussion, and you thought you might be able to learn something, and you're here. And so I appreciate you guys being here as well. I believe in talking about the 5 laws of relationship, which is what we're going to be talking about over the next few hours. I believe that talking about the 5 laws of relationship is integral to achieving maximum success in your relationships, whether they're business relationships, whether there are parent relationships, whether they are spousal relationships, any relationship in your life. I firmly believe this, and I appreciate you coming out. But first, before we get into it, I kind of want to give an introduction. Life is about juxtapositions. And in no area of life is this clearer than in our relationships. In our relationships, there are 2 different roads that we can travel in business and life. Now, one road is based off of the transactional. Everything exists as a transaction, and there is usually a winner and a loser. The other is a road based in the relational. Everything exists in relation to each other. There may be winners and losers, but in general, everything is about furthering the relationship between 2 things, not a tick mark of who won. Now, there are obviously pros and cons to each of these roads. And while this talk is going to talk about the relational, how we need to be more relational and less transactional, it is important to note that the transactional happens. Competition matters a great deal, and having winners and losers is not in itself a bad thing. So I don't want you to think that this book is just all mushy-gushy and we shouldn't have this competition. There should be no winners and losers, and we're all winners and that kind of thing. That's not it. But competition without great sportsmanship is an eyesore, okay? And we understand this in athletic competition. And it exists that way because someone cared too much about the transactional and nothing for the relational. In other words, they cared more about the temporal and not the eternal. Right? Now, that is not to say that merely having a relationship means that you are relational in your thinking, nor is someone who engages in a transaction transactional in their thinking. So the way that I always sum this up is there a way to win well? Well, I believe the answer to that is yes. And there is also a way to succeed while destroying everyone beside oneself. Now, fulfillment aside, we have all seen many an athlete, a billionaire, and a person succeed, but at great cost. Transactionally, they won, but relationally, they lost. Now, even on our own streets, we see men and women with soaring careers, but divorces, estranged children, and distant families in their wake. We see CEOs with massive companies, but the people inside that company, they may respect them, quote unquote, because they are the leader of the company, but they do not respect them on a personal level because they are a jerk, and they have devoted themselves to the transaction and not the relational. Now, in this talk, we are obviously going to look at the 5 laws of relationship, but we're also going to glance at the 5 laws of the transactional. Because for every law of human interaction, there is an equal and opposite law, and that we as humans don't completely fail across the board. You can be relational in one sense and transactional in another. And by outlining the laws in both these spheres, the goal is for you to be able to improve where you need to improve. I know that in my own personal life, I have not hit the target in every area. And I want to point that out. I fail at these on a regular basis. These are not meant to be like, hey, I'm the poobah on the mountaintop coming down with the 2 tablets here. Okay, that's not the point of this. The point is that we all have work to do, and hopefully you're able to say, I'm really good at this one law of relation, but in this other one, I really lean towards the transactional, so I'm able to go. Now, so where did I get these laws? You will see that many of these are precepts that I pulled from Scripture, but I do believe that they are universal in their application. And I believe there is great wisdom in understanding human nature, and what Scripture says about our relationships has great meaning and application even for those who don't believe in certain religious dogma. So if you're here today and you are not a Christian, you don't believe in the Bible, I still believe that there's wisdom in some of these things. I believe that you can pull some wisdom from what is being talked about. And so I hope that is able to speak to you. I do come from a particular viewpoint, but my hope is that you embrace the wisdom even if you may disagree with the source. So with that, we're going to talk about the first law of relationship. The first law of relationship is pretty simple. It's the golden rule. Now, all of us have heard the golden rule, but for someone who may have not, here is, in a nutshell, the golden rule. This comes from Matthew 7:12 in the New Testament. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Now, usually, someone doesn't start with something that quote-unquote sums up all the law and the prophets. But the golden rule is the most commonly used and misunderstood rule there is when it comes to our human relationships. And so, as with most things, the issue at stake here isn't the rule itself necessarily, but the application. So that's what we're going to talk about. The first thing we're going to talk about is what the golden rule is not about. The golden rule is not about anyone else's behavior. Now, our sense of fairness and justice dictates that someone should be treated how they treat others, right? It is almost like an eye for an eye type deal. And for all the tropes about revenge and forgiveness, we love watching someone get their comeuppance. Whole movie plots, screenplays, novels, songs, news stories are about the bully getting their just desserts. All right? And we just gobble those up. We love those. This is natural and not on its face bad or improper, but we should want to see justice done. But vigilante justice is seen by a civilized society as untoward, even if justice is done. And why? because taking the law into our own hands is one step from anarchy. And so while we loathe the vigilante, each one of us do this in a microform every single day. So we hear this kind of talked about, well, so-and-so hurt others, so I can hurt them. Or more prescient on this is, so-and-so treats others this way, so they must want to be treated this way, right? But in the end, the golden rule says nothing about how others are treating you. There are no asterisks. There are no fine print. It is not about how others are acting. So what we deem from this is that the golden rule is about my behavior. And this is not about justice, this is about actions. My actions. If I wouldn't want to be treated in a certain way, I shouldn't treat anyone that way. Period. No asterisks, no fine print. If I wouldn't want a contractor ripping me off, why would I rip off somebody? If I wouldn't like gossiping about somebody on Facebook, why would I gossip about somebody on Facebook? Whether they deserve it or not is not a question for considering, because that has nothing to do with the practical application of the golden rule. Which leads to the most difficult lesson. I am only in control of one person. Myself. I can't control others' actions, but I can control my own. I can't control how others will treat me, but I can control how I treat others. You can never justify ill behavior towards others based off of what they are doing to you, because in the end, this application is about how we want to be treated. Now, the kind of the outcome of this is the rules of relationship. People cannot always trust that they will be treated well. In fact, a lot of times we won't. But we can always establish a relationship of trust that we are going to treat them how we want to be treated. And that trust, you'll hear this over and over again, trust is the currency for relationship. And in the chance that you are mistreated, your friends will end up coming to your defense more readily and fuller of energy because they know that you didn't provoke the mistreatment. In other words, they see the injustice and they'll try to fix that justice on your behalf because you'll have people in your corner. I can imagine no worse feeling than suffering a valley moment and doing that alone because those feel that I've deserved it or I've provoked it. So that's the first law of relationship, the golden rule. Now, let's talk about the first law of transaction. It's the misapplication of justice and reciprocation. I hear this all the time in my household, and for you parents out there, you know that you hear it all the time as well. Well, she did it to me. Gets yelled in my household always through tears, and it is a refrain that is often heard in a household with multiple children. Something had been taken, a fight ensued, and vigilante justice had been carried out. And, our reaction, though, isn't that that's all good, right? We're thinking, of course not. But that is only because you think children are involved. And when I gave that example, children were involved. But that is the mindsets carried out in everyday lives constantly. And it is destroying the foundations of relationships, and we don't even know it. There is definitely a proper place for justice, retribution, and atonement. I want to make that clear. But you won't hear me ever argue otherwise. But too often we take these matters in our own hands. And we often don't know the full context of what is happening. We judge others quickly. And we withhold mercy when we demand it, but we demand it on our behest. And it is simply because societally we have forgotten that the actions first start with me. And I can treat others how I want to be treated. All right. So, Rob, what are your thoughts, initial thoughts on what was discussed.
Yeah, so there's a lot that I think you have a lot of insight when it comes to people and understanding how people ought to be treated when it is depending on the variation of relationship that you're in. So like for me, so the golden rule is essentially do unto others. Everyone knows the basic premise of it. But as you get into it deeper, you realize that a lot of people, as they start to get deeper and deeper into relationships, they don't necessarily hold to that rule because their benefit to themselves can be weighed to their favor if they take advantage of client A, B, or C. So there's a lot of people who adhere to the golden rule on the surface, but as you look into their business dealings, you find that is only true when the odds may not be in their favor. Then they want to claim it. Like for me, when I work with people, and I've had a client recently who I got into a very big blowout with, and I said some things that weren't very kind, but they needed to be said, and I firmly believe I was emphasizing the golden rule, because had I done what he did, I would have wanted someone to say the same thing to me. And so it's not just about positivity and moving forward and all of this. It's also about criticism and dealing with that constructively. So the golden rule is, it's not just about building up. I mean, at the end of the day, like once everything works itself out and the process comes to fruition, it is. But there are parts of that process that aren't necessarily the most positive. So I thought you did a very nice job at articulating at a deeper level what the golden rule actually is.
Yeah, I think that if you would ask most people, if you gave them the choice, are you relational or are you transactional? I think most people would say, oh, I'm relational.
For sure.
Right? And that's kind of why I wanted to go through not just the laws of relationship, but the laws of transaction, because I wanted to show people is like, in certain areas of your life, you are transactional, and you have to move away from the transactional to the relational if you truly want to be present in somebody's life on a relational basis. Now, whether that's your customers, whether that's people you're trying to convince of your political view, whether it's people in your congregation, you have to move away from the transactional to the relational, because that is where the best mutual benefit for all of us actually occurs.
Yeah, there's so many times where this idea of the golden rule is misinterpreted, it's misunderstood. So I thought that you put that in a context that was easily understandable, as well as kind of making that difference between the transactional and the relational. One of the other things that I really appreciated was the idea of, kind of this idea of not being judgmental based on, failures in one or more of these areas. There's going to be areas just naturally that we do better at. We understand the principles, or they apply more naturally to our lives based on our personality or our upbringing. But there might be other areas that we need to work on. So this isn't a pass-fail test. It is in our interactions with other people, we should strive to be more relational, and we should strive to implement these rules in our lives. But, we might be better at doing that with rule 1 than say maybe 2 or 3. And I think that's a really important thing to understand.
Right. And also understanding that people you encounter might be doing it in one way or another as well. What's really been really neat as I've worked through this is obviously with my own family. Now, if you were to spend a day in life with the Martin children, you would realize that we were constantly working on these, specifically Rule 1 with the Golden Rule. And you know what? I hear this all the time from my kids as well. Well, she did it, so obviously she wants it done, right? Or, all the misapplications of the Golden Rule that happen. And what I've discovered is when it comes to relational versus transactional, being around my kids has been amazing, mainly because they're really, really honest. Okay. Because if I was talking to an adult who hurt somebody else, they would basically try to make an excuse. They wouldn't just come out and be like, well, they treated me like this, so they obviously want to be treated. Now, that honesty that you get from children really goes down to the human nature element, which has been fascinating to watch through this as well.
I think that being said, though, you can look at certain leaders, and we've all seen it, where you can pick apart a leader's leadership style, and maybe we don't frame it in this way exactly, but we've all met leaders that are transactional at their core.
Yes.
And that's obviously a problem. And so there are people out there that are probably failing in some way in each of these rules. And I think that's an opportunity for us here, is to look at, which rules maybe we can do better on, and how we can be relational. And maybe it's not we're 100% one way or the other. Maybe it's we're 60-40, but we've still got room to improve.
Yeah, and we talked about one last week, right? We talked about Steve Jobs. And I would say that Steve Jobs probably was very transactional. I don't think he was very relational. And I think you look at some of his even personal relationships, this was evident. I think he got better towards the end of his life, but I think we all tend to get better at relationships towards the end of our life. What we really need to do is work out them at the beginning of our life, so that we're not dying alone, right? And but that was one of them. And again, going back to that, it's that transaction versus relationship. And again, it's not that transaction is necessarily bad, but if it's misapplied and that's all you're driving for, and we talked about this last week too, Rob, when we were talking about business, how profit wasn't the motivating driver. Well, if profit's the motivating driver, then you probably are transactional. And you're not focused on the necessary relationship there, and you're not providing best customer service or the best service to your customers. So, it's just, it has a tendency to kind of involve itself and weave itself all the way through every aspect of our life. And I think that sometimes we try to separate it out. We try to separate out how I am at church and in my church community with how I am with my family, with how I am with my business. And what I'm trying to get across to people is that, in every aspect of your life, you have a choice between transactional and relational thinking. And the more you push towards that relational thinking, the better and deeper and richer your relationships are actually going to be, and more meaningful on every level. And it has to weave itself throughout every aspect of your life. You can't be one person as the CEO and another person in your home and think that dichotomy is going to work long term.
I think that at the core, I think that you can probably boil it down to transactional leaders, or this transactional mentality ultimately gets at the idea of the end justifies the means. And it's one of the reasons that, I took issue with Steve Jobs being in the Mount Rushmore of business leaders. Is his legacy, I think, more than anything, is this idea, I think you said it perfectly, Nathan, this idea of transactional leaders. He got a ton of stuff done. He was able to accomplish, in that sense, he was a great leader. But when it comes to relationships, when it comes to treating his employees well, I don't think that he did that well. And so it's a perfect example of transactional leadership. And so I think what we're going to get to in this series is, how do we do it both, right? How do we accomplish things? How do we, accomplish those goals without, stepping over people across the way? And that is, that's at the heart of this idea of relationships and relational leadership.
Absolutely. Is it possible to win well?
Yeah.
Is it possible to win well? Rob?
Yeah, one of the leadership theories that I really clung to when I was working through my MBA was transformational leadership. And it was something that I was able to not lecture, but I guess discuss or give a presentation to the senior leadership on my team on as far as what a good transformation leader does and how it really puts value into the people that you work with. And that is so far away from transactional leadership because it looks first and foremost on the people that you're actually working with. And that was kind of eye-opening to them because the organization that I work with is very much transactional with its people. And sometimes that gets caught up. They do a lot of peripheral things that employees really like, which is why turnover is demonstrably low there. But as far as focusing in on their people was something that they didn't really think about a whole lot. So that was kind of cool to talk about transformational leadership and see a couple of people really, really buy in and start to change small things. And it's not as though they were bad leaders or anything like that. It was just another tool in their arsenal to help them become even better leaders.
Absolutely. So, Jeremiah, obviously, as we go through this, we want to elicit feedback from our listeners as we go through this. What are their thoughts on the varying points as well? And if they want to reach out to us and get engaged in this conversation, how do they go about doing it?
Absolutely. So they can follow us on at Money Power Pod on all socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They can email us at moneypowerpod@gmail.com. We've got some really great feedback this week, but if people want to reach out, make a comment, take issue with anything we've said up to this point, please leave us a comment, send us a message, send us a voice message. You can create a voice memo on your phone and email it to us at moneypowerpod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Outstanding. So on that note, we did get some pretty good feedback this week. So Jeremiah, why don't you give us the rundown?
So last week, we reintroduced the Meme Busters segment. You can, if you didn't get a chance to listen, you can take a look at that. The meme we posted, anytime we do a Meme Busters segment, we will be posting that at moneypowerpod.com/meme. And so if you go there, it'll see our latest meme that we have busted. And last week's meme related to kind of freedom of speech, freedom of association, businesses turning away business based on political ideals or based on religious beliefs. And so, like I said, you can view that meme at moneypowerpod.com/meme. But one of our listeners, Sean Robb, commented on that on Facebook and said, the Red Hen has the right, as any business has the right, to refuse service. No shirt, no shoes, no service is just one example that is widely used among businesses. And obviously, if you listen to last week's episode, that was kind of our take that businesses should have that right. And ultimately, in this day and age, when it comes to social media, people will be able to see. If there's a racist business, we'll be able to see that, hey, this is a racist business, and we're not going to want to, give our business to them. Or if, they hate veterans, they hate America, hey, make that known, and we won't, attend or purchase from that business. So good input. We appreciate that, Sean. But we also got, we posted on Facebook. We asked what kind of topics people wanted to hear about us talk on this podcast. And people talked about monopolies. They mentioned term limits, healthcare, and Kevin Small suggested a meme buster segment. And so you can look forward to seeing some of those topics talked about on future episodes. Once again, if you've got topic considerations or comments or concerns, snarks or complaints, we'd love to hear from you at Money Power Pod on all socials.
All right. Outstanding. And in light of the great holiday that we're about to embark on, Rob, you have something for us.
I do. Strike Force Energy is about as American as Uncle Sam in an American flag Speedo grilling hot dogs on the 4th of July. It is your duty to visit StrikeForceEnergy.com and buy one of their beverage-enhancing packets. They don't have one of those communist powder packets that look like you just got a fresh envelope of anthrax delivered to your desk. Absolutely not. They have the aluminum liquid packets of energy that even Joe Biden can mix. Elizabeth Warren's ancestors used Strike Force Energy as they were crossing the eastern plains of Montana. Wait, what's that? She's from Europe? Oh, strike that. Strike Force Energy is America. You'd fall into a deep depression if you did not visit StrikeForceEnergy.com and use offer code MAP for 20% off anything. 66 million Hillary Clinton voters cannot be wrong. What's that? 2016? Oh, that sucks. Alright friends, one more thing. We'd be drinking tea through our rotten ass teeth if Paul Revere didn't do a shot of Strike Force before his midnight ride. Strike Force Energy, the chosen drink of patriots everywhere.
Well done, sir. Well
amazing.
done.
That was awesome. All right.
That was so much fun right now.
That was awesome. All right. So, oh my. All right. So now we come to the part of the show where we give our hot takes, our reviews, and the things of that ilk. Parting shots. All right, Jeremiah, what do you got?
So I recently heard, I think it was on a podcast, but people were talking about this idea that we're taught as Americans. We're taught from a young age that in America it's a land of opportunity. You can do anything that you put your mind to. It's one of the things that we often tell our kids. I'm sure we've each heard it. But as I was listening to this podcast, they were talking about how, well, no, you can't do anything that you put your mind to. If someone's 5'3" male, they're probably not going to be in the NBA, right? And I think that's fair. But I think it misses the point of this concept of do anything that you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think as we celebrate Independence Day, as we celebrate July 4th, I think that more than ever, we need to realize this concept of that in America, it is the land of opportunity. And in the grand scheme of things, we can do anything that we put our mind to. I think that while the point is valid, down to the individual, no, if you are under 5 foot, you probably won't play in the NBA, or you might not be, the next billionaire. But I don't think that that's our problem in America. I don't think that our problem is that our sights are set too high. I think that the average person, if you talk to on the street, I think the average person has their sights set too low.
Yeah.
That they're just trying to get through the next paycheck. They're just trying to get to the next year. They're just trying to get to the next hill to climb. And so I kind of want to revamp this idea of that we as Americans, that we can do anything that we put our mind to. I don't think that it is something that we should not teach our children. I think that anyone with intellectual honesty understands what you're trying to say. They understand the concept behind what you're trying to say. They're not saying that everyone can play in the NBA. They're not saying that everyone is going to be, the next Steve Jobs. They're not saying that, but when you talk about economic opportunity and when you compare that to the majority of countries around the world, like, we can do just about anything that we put our mind to. And so I want to revitalize that mindset as we celebrate Independence Day here, and as we celebrate this time in our country's history where we faced insurmountable odds and ultimately overcame. I think that each of us can learn something from that and apply that to our own lives. So that is my parting shot.
That's amazing.
Who in
I
the
will
hell
say that,
picked the order for parting shots? Why didn't he go last? Now I have to talk about some stupid podcast that I listened to this week after that. Sweet.
Yep, you do. But first, I'm going to riff on it a little bit, kind of piggyback on that. So we obviously do foster care, and we've had people stay in our house who were just at a time in their life where they needed some help. Yep. And speaking to some of these young ladies who have come through, what's really struck me is, when you sit down, you're like, okay, what are your dreams? What are your goals? And they have none. And it's so heartbreaking. Sometimes I think we look at failure as not being able to achieve our dreams.
Right.
And I don't think that's the case at all. I think true failure is not having the capacity to dream at all. And that's what really separates us from other countries. There are a lot of people in a lot of countries around the world that they don't even have the capacity to dream big dreams and think big things because they're in survival mode. And that's not the case for a majority of us here in America. So let's celebrate that and celebrate Rob's parting shot. Rob?
No, I agree. Before I do my parting shot, I do want to say that was really well said. You too, Nathan, what you said as well. But there was it reminded me of a young man who I worked with through the church. He had said he came from a family who was drug abusers and didn't really have a lot of time for him. And he said, I can't do anything. I have nothing. I said, what do you want to do? I said, you have no debt. You have no liabilities. You're not married. You don't have any children. You can literally do anything you want right now. And he wanted to go learn how to build an equestrian ranch, work with horses. And I said, well, why don't we work on doing that? So we did. And he found a place and he moved 10 states away to go do just that, like 6 weeks later. So for a lot of people, all it takes is just a spark, someone talking to them, someone telling them it's actually very possible. But no one in their life speaks that to them, so they don't do it. And that's really sad. So,
yeah. That's awesome. Good word, Rob.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So my parting shot is I listened to listen. Oh, this is stupid. You know what? I'm going to break protocol. My parting shot and go back and re-listen to what Jeremiah just said. There you go. Your turn, Nathan.
Hey, Rob, your dreams matter.
I didn't say they don't. I know they do. But my parting shot sure as hell doesn't matter this week, so I'm going to just pass it along.
All right, so my parting shot's going to be a little bit of a rant. So I got a little bit of kickback from people and their stupid dog babies or fur babies or whatever. So I'm going to keep on that kick and attack pet owners. So it's the 4th of July. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 4th of July, we do fireworks. I don't care if it scares your papadoodle or whatever you have. I don't care if they pee all over your house. I don't care if they have anxiety that you give them medication for. And then you abruptly complain that we don't have free health care in this country to help those who are homeless while you're popping Benadryl into your pet. No, I don't care. It's the 4th of July. We are going to blow crap up because that is our prerogative. As John Adams said, there is no greater sense to celebrate this wondrous occasion than to set off fireworks and jubilation. So everyone, blow crap up. Set those firecrackers off. And if you have someone in your neighborhood who's stupid and has a stupid sign that says, please be respectful of my popperdoodle or whatever they have, blow stuff up in their front yard. Be an American.
All right, very good. This message was not approved by Rob Johnson.
Do you have an anxious pet?
No. I thought what you said was very nice, very eloquent. I'm with you there. No, I do have an anxious pet.
All
but
right.
He's fine. He'll get over it. He'll forget about it the next day. He's fine.
It does make you wonder if certain people like don't have access to calendars. That like tomorrow is, or when this releases, yesterday was July 4th. Did you not see that coming? Rob, it's like in the in the financial world when people are surprised when Christmas rolls around. Like, do you not have access to a calendar? Like,
Yeah, like it's April 15th already. Yeah, same time as last year, idiot.
yeah, you do realize that these dates roll around, the same time every year. It's like,
Yeah.
What's the date of July 4th again?
Christmas isn't like Thanksgiving, like it's like when's Thanksgiving this year? Because that actually changes.
That could be November
but it's
3rd
still
or the
at
27th.
the end of November.
Yeah.
It's still in that general realm. Because people are so shocked. They're like, "Whoa, Christmas is happening next week."
So
Let's bring out the credit cards.
So before we close, I wanted to spring this on you guys. So we didn't have a Mount Rushmore this week, but I did have a question for you that I think you can answer without having to prepare for. And I thought the listeners might like it because since they are podcast listeners, I thought they might like to know what 2 or 3 podcasts you're listening to right now. Just kind of a closing bit, if you will.
All right, so my main podcast that I listen to on a regular basis. I listen to 1620 The Zone, Sharp and Benning in the morning, because they talk about Nebraska football a lot, and they're out of Omaha. And so, yeah, I listen to a local sports morning show in Omaha for my Husker fix. I also listen to the Bill Simmons podcast on a quite regular basis, and this little startup called Money and Power. No, but there's another podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network that I listen to that is called Against All Odds, and they do a bunch of funny gambling stuff on there. That's pretty funny. So that's basically my rotation that I listen to on a regular basis.
So some podcasts that I've been listening to, I listen to religiously. I listen to The Way I Heard It by Mike Rowe. His podcast is great. Got a little bit of a twist at the end of each podcast. The way he tells stories is great. So I love that podcast. I never miss it. The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe. I mentioned this on the podcast in one of the first couple episodes, but I've been listening to a podcast on the Wondery podcast network called This Is War, and that which is not necessarily for the faint of heart, but if you kind of want to understand some of the motivations behind service members serving overseas, that's a really good place to start. I listen to the Ben Shapiro podcast almost every day as it releases, and I listen to you may have heard of this guy named Rob Johnson. He's got a podcast called Rob Talks Money. I'll listen to that. I've listened to every episode up to this point. So
you're the one. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. I listened to Ben Shapiro as well. That was one of my top ones. The other 3 that I listen to quite a bit is obviously I mentioned last week how much I like Joe Rogan. So I listen to his show. It's a time investment because he releases about 15 hours of podcasts every week. So it's like 5 3-hour episodes. So he's potting at a man no man can keep up with.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you listen to every episode? Because I've got that subscribed, but I only listen to the episodes that that kind of pique my interest. Do you listen to every episode?
Not every episode. There's some that I haven't listened to. I'm a big MMA fan, but I haven't listened to any of his MMA shows, which doesn't really make sense. But it's like those are another 3.5 hours of investment that I don't really have. So like when I'm working and stuff, I don't really necessarily need to hear what other people are saying, so I can have my AirPods in all day. So it's kind of nice. But Rogan is one. Freakonomics is a really good. It's it kind of looks at the financial side of all topics. That's a really good one. And they release, I think, every day as well, every day during the week. They are a very, very big top 25 show. And then True Crime Garage is a true crime podcast that I listen to quite a bit. So it's those are the three. Gary Vee is also in my list. William Lane Craig's podcast, Reasonable Faith, is in there. And as of today, Apologetics 105 is back in my list, as I just re-released that show this week. So
Yeah.
And so here's where we find out that this whole segment
Yes.
was just an effort
shameless plug
of Rob to just plug his multiple podcasts that he's on.
Shameless plug.
like that.
Yeah.
Hey, I kind of respect it.
Yeah.
Well, and people learn things.
I respect the hustle.
And really, I do think that podcasts are, in many ways, much more valuable than video, because you can digest on the go. You don't really need to sit and watch. And I think podcasts are the wave of the future. Bold statement. 11 years after they came out.
So I obviously will watch stuff, but I'll watch it in the background on my computer a lot, so I'll listen to it. And you know what's the worst to do that is like shows like Narcos, where they have subtitles, because I don't know Spanish. So you're forced to actually watch it, and it's so difficult to get through those because you're used to watching stuff, quote unquote, in the background, but you're really just listening to it. Which is
and
how
then you
I
realize
consume a lot of my video content that I consume.
And then you just realize 5 minutes later that you didn't catch any of the conversation that just happened.
Yeah, you're like, wait, Spanish is happening right now. I gotta go back. Yeah. All right, guys. I think this was a awesome episode. Thank you guys for joining me. And thank you, our listening audience, for being with us every step of the way. For Jeremiah Martin, for Rob Johnson, I am Nathan Martin saying good night and good luck.
I got the money in the pile. Once you get a little, they just want to take you down, cuz.